For a second there, I was thinking you might be playing some NWA today to get today's episode started. Aren't they the ones that wrote Fuck the Police? Isn't that NWA?
Very good.
It's been a while since I last saw Straight Outta Compton. That was a fantastic movie, by the way.
That is a great movie. See, now I've accidentally touched the camera, and now I don't know what to do anymore. Should not have done that.
Hello and welcome to the Untranslatable Podcast. We are here today to talk about police perceptions in the United States, and I have my boots on the ground today. Thankfully, I am being protected by the little barricade bar in front of me, and I'm out hanging out with my protesting buddies and my police not buddies in their riot gear, ready to go. So we are here today to talk about police perceptions in the United States. And why we might have such a complicated relationship with police. Maybe there's a simple answer, maybe there's not, but stay tuned today and we will be finding out one way or another. And I think it's very safe to say that in a lot of ways, the police have a lot, maybe even too much power in the United States. We won't be talking about police in other countries. We might cover that in a later episode at some point in the future. But we thought, as Americans, and both of us having I can't speak for Jared, but I've been pulled over a couple of times, that we do have some experience with the police, so we'll be talking about that today. So without further ado, I'm glad to be joined by my co-host, my good buddy, Jared. What's going on, Jared?
Hello. First of all, I can neither confirm nor deny whether I've had any interactions with police officers.
Alleged, isn't that the term, right? Alleged interaction.
Or in Michigan or any other state in the United States of America. What a lovely and perfect topic for Chad to think of during this upcoming white boy summer, the perceptions of the police in the United States. It makes perfect sense. And I think it is a great topic discussion. I saw a movie last night, and it's new. It's a short film, I guess. I think it's like 30, 40 minutes maybe. I didn't actually check. This is just me going off of feel, you know. But it certainly is a short film, so it's definitely no longer than an hour. And it's called Two Distant Strangers. Have you seen that? You've probably seen it on your Netflix.
I haven't been on Netflix in a while. I've been HBO Maxing it up. I finished up the regular show. Just started watching the QAnon documentary, which we'll have to talk about in a second. But tell me more about this.
Is like the Pfizer vaccine to Netflix being the Moderna.
What's it called again?
Two Distant Strangers. Two Distant Strangers is the premise of this movie. Is that a guy is waking up at a hookups house, and he's leaving her place, and he gets killed by a police officer. But then when he gets, he goes through a scenario, and then what ends up with him getting accosted and killed by a police officer. And then as soon as he dies, like it's that thing where you die and then you wake up immediately, almost to imply that, or it felt
it was
like
a
to
dream
him that he had a bad dream. And then, he wakes up with the same girl or whatever. And then he goes through the scenario over and over and over again. And he keeps waking up with the same girl. And trying new scenarios. Like he's like, all right, well, let me not do this, or let me do that, or
right.
let me just all different sort of these ways to get home. And the whole thing, the whole premise is essentially he's trying to get home to his dog, and so it's a great movie. It was really cool. It is trippy, and it is sort of aggravating sometimes. You can feel sort of his stress and anger because, you should watch it. I guess I won't fully give it away, but it's also very fitting for today's episode because I guess I'll kind of ruin it. Why not? The overall premise of the what's the term when it's like this is what the movie is trying to like. This is the whole the theme of the movie.
Yeah, theme. Sure.
Okay. Is that
or premise? I think premise was fine too.
Is that no matter what you do as a like there's really nothing you can do to avoid if these interactions with the police are like there's nothing the victim can do about it.
Yeah.
And it's just these situations where, and it represents that really no matter what you're doing and no matter what way you try to approach it, it can happen to anyone essentially, no matter what you do. And then they end it by listing off a whole bunch of names of people that have been killed by the police, and it shows like how various people have been killed by the police, and it's like while asleep, while walking home, while driving home from dinner, stuff like that.
And the sad thing is about all of that, Jared, is a lot of those people, it was a lot of times, I think, very racially fueled, right? I mean, the majority, and I just Googled it, looks like the main character is also a black man, right?
Yeah, black man, and then it's in New York, and it's like this sort of stereotypical, like, Irish New York cop, white dude.
Okay. So last name's probably O'Hannessy or something?
It's Merck.
O'Flannigan.
Oh, it's Merck. I'm terrible with names. Okay. I'm surprised I remember that. Probably because I saw the same scene.
Right. You know what that reminds me of, by the way? A movie with another movie with like repetitive scenes like that is Lola Rent, or Run Lola Run in English. We watched that back in college, and that movie also, because
that involves the police too.
It does, yeah, it does. I think for very different reasons, but
that's true.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny though, Jared, about this movie is that I haven't seen it yet, but I do want to watch it now. But the funny thing is while I was researching for this episode today, I wanted to see what. I mean, honestly, I probably could have just asked some kids I went to high school with and I would have gotten the same results. But I wanted to see what a lot of white people's responses would be when things like this happen, right? Because generally speaking, if we're talking about the U.S., a lot of white people respect the police, don't have issues with police, whatever. I'll be honest, I am kind of afraid of the police myself personally. But the thing is that so many white people will say things like, "Oh, well, you just gotta cooperate and just do what they say."
Yeah,
and it's like, have you not seen the numerous? I mean, and the saddest thing of all, Jared, is that we have video evidence of a lot of these altercations and other issues, and a lot of times people are doing exactly what the police say, but because they have all the power, the cops can do what they want. It's crazy.
It just happened the other day did you see the military guy at the gas station? There was a dude in his military fatigues too, a black guy. And they were telling him they were telling him to get out of the car. And he was holding his hands up outside the window and just like asking, like, what am I being detained for? And they're just yelling at him, get out of the car, the guns are out or whatever. And then then one of the dudes starts spraying pepper spray into the guy's car. And then eventually they get him out. And then, but he didn't do anything.
Right.
I don't understand. Like, I don't even understand, one, how it got to that level, and then obviously, as you were saying before about wondering what all the white people are wondering. I don't know why I do this to myself, but on Twitter I can't help myself, but I have to go look at the comments. So then I scroll through 3 comments. I'm like, all right, I've had enough. I don't need to see this. But it's all sorts of, well, why isn't he just complying? And it's like, well, why did it even escalate to this level? And why can't they answer his question? It's just a simple question. Like, what's the problem? I don't understand the problem here.
Right.
So yeah. So I mean, I see at least the Twitter version of people's opinions all the time, and I don't even know why I put myself through it. It's one of the worst parts of social media, honestly. And I go into it knowing what I'm going to see, and I still do it. We've been talking about all this black-white stuff. Before we move on, I had actually one more observation I noticed. So
let's hear it.
I was driving through. I've been doing some house hunting, and I've been neglecting East Detroit. As a kid, I'd always been told that West Detroit was like sort of the good side, and East Detroit was not. and this was just as stuff I heard as a kid. There was no real logic behind it. So for the longest time, that has always just been my perception because that's what I heard as a kid. And so, I was thinking about it because there were a bunch of houses that I had sort of just overlooked, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna put some boots on the ground, some tires on the ground.
Nice.
And so I actually I drove around over there for a good amount of time actually, and I just did some exploration. Are you familiar with Grosse Pointe?
Yeah.
So Grosse Pointe is on the east side, and they have and they have these like a lot of perceptions and stereotypes for being pretty racist and pretty discriminatory against black people there. And it's a very lovely, like visually, it's a beautiful neighborhood, big old historic like Detroit style homes and stuff like that. And it's like super gated in. It's so crazy how this city is because like the city limits, you could see them by like a fence, like the entire city's like sort of fenced in, and then like you go one block over and it's like sort of a lot of dilapidated houses and the neighborhood quality goes down like immediately as soon as you just cross over like one street and some fences on the other side, and it's just very closed off, even though it's like sort of right in the middle of in the heart of East Detroit or whatever. And so anyway, the observation I had, and I don't really have an answer for this, I just want to throw this out here, get your opinion on it. When I was going through the Detroit sort of black quote unquote neighborhoods, through the neighborhood areas, there were on all the like the cross streets, there would be no stop sign or any sort of yield sign going one way, and then the other way there would be yield signs. So a lot of these East Detroit neighborhoods that like the black neighborhoods had no stop signs. Unless you're crossing like a major road, but within the neighborhood, it would all just be either nothing or yield signs. But then I went to, and I was like, this is weird. Why would they have like does not seem like a good system. So I guess you get used to the fact that okay, if then you just got to use yield kind of as a rolling stop sign, then really just how we use stop signs in general, I guess. But then I started driving through Grosse Pointe. And they had stop signs. They had four-way stops all over the place. And I'm like, okay, I understand logically in my head that obviously Grosse Pointe has a lot bigger budget. They have a lot more money to spend on
stop signs,
infrastructure, and beautification of the neighborhoods and security and police presence and all this stuff like that. But I don't understand the yield versus stop sign thing, because it's not like stop signs are more expensive than yields. Like I don't understand the difference there.
Well, Jared, the red material in the stop signs is 3 times the cost of the yellow material in the yield signs.
Now I'm going to assume and probably be right to the fact that it probably goes back to slavery somehow. But I am honestly very curious. Why? You know who I should ask? My freaking real estate agent. I'm going to ask him that next time I see him.
Ask him and let me know what he says.
Why is that? Because it's like you can put stop. I don't understand.
There's no way a stop sign is that expensive. There's no way.
Like how? Because there are plenty of yield signs. It's not like there's a lack of yield signs in the neighborhood. So it's like, why couldn't she just put stop signs there instead?
Now let me ask this, and this is just a
lower
question.
Income neighborhoods where this is the case.
No, this is just a question, but also who comes up with the rules for like traffic laws and zoning and because I wonder if like. As a community, are you able to vote on that? Like, who decides? Who decides on that?
Do you take that stuff to the city council or something?
Right. I have no idea. But here's my, and this is a crazy just conspiracy idea / thought here, Jared. What if you don't have stop signs, you can't get pulled over for running a stoplight? Do you think that could have anything to do with it? I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
I'm going to play devil's advocate to your devil's advocate. And this also makes me think of another way to screw over black people. I imagine not having stop signs is going to affect your insurance rates negatively.
Could be. I do know your insurance rates in Detroit are ungodly.
Sure. I mean, I used to live in Philadelphia. I'm very familiar with terrible insurance.
Right.
But no, I mean, for sure. So I remember actually when I lived in Philadelphia, I moved literally probably 8-minute walk down the street, but my zip code went literally one number change, sort of towards the more lower income section, and my insurance went up.
Oh, geez.
And I'm like, I could walk from where I used to live. How much more crime do you think is happening?
Right.
It was so aggravating.
Oh, man. We have so many. I think we need to do other episodes like this because we have so many like just systems and infrastructure in the U.S. that is so messed up. And if you have traveled outside of the U.S., I think you start to realize these things more and more. And that's why a lot of Americans who aren't well traveled or very cultured or very educated, who you don't know about these things. Because like one thing that I'll never forget, which I thought it just boggled my mind, was we were in St. Thomas and St. Martin, which are like I believe, St. Thomas is a Dutch and I think French-owned island, if I remember correctly. But the whole island, for example, Jared, they didn't have any stop signs on the entire island. And at first, like we had a tour bus driver who was telling us all this stuff, and he was like, we used to have stop signs, but then one of the hurricanes went through the island and just ravaged the island, and then we just decided, we're not going to put the stop signs back up. So it was really cool though to see the way people would drive, because people who lived there knew how to deal with that, right? But if you're a tourist and you're used to having stop signs, you're going to be like, well, how the hell do I even drive in this place?
Yeah, I mean, but I feel like in that case, it's more like they just like, we got used to it. Well, there's no reason to put them back up. We all know what we're doing at these places. Still probably isn't. Yeah, but yeah, people adapt for sure.
Definitely.
And it seems like it would be very easy to adapt in these situations where, because as I said before, then you just use yield as a stop sign essentially.
Right.
It just made no sense to me. It made no sense to me.
It makes no sense to me, Jared.
Untranslatables? That's yes. Is that what you were
sure.
saying?
Well, that wasn't where I'm saying, but we can get started with the untranslatables. That's okay.
You asked me to guess, so I guessed. What makes no sense to you? You can tell me.
QAnon. And the whole movement around QAnon. So I did mention to you off the air that I started watching this document series on HBO Max on QAnon. And it was really interesting because, once again, like anything like QAnon type stuff, it's very kind of conspiracy theorist type of stuff, and I'll be honest, I'm definitely kind of interested in that stuff. I don't believe it all, but it's interesting to look at and think about. And so far I've only watched one episode, Jared, and the episode is titled "The Calm Before the Storm." And so what's fascinating about this whole QAnon thing is, first of all, the fact that it is anonymous is at least what they were saying in the documentary so far. The fact that whoever this Q character is anonymous is actually what gave him so much power and popularity, because it could be anyone. It's kind of like Batman.
QAnon is a person? Is one person?
Well, so I'm not that far. I've only seen one episode.
Dude, there's a house like probably 10 minutes down the street from me, and they used to have a bunch of MAGA flags out front, Confederate flags, big ones, bro, American flags, and they took down some of those MAGA flags. They still have one MAGA flag up. It's actually kind of cool. It's on like wooden boards, and it's like an American flag, but sort of in the background they have MAGA written. I mean, it's terrible, and I don't agree with it. But the way it's done, I'm like, I mean, that's not bad. But anyway, they also have a. I'm going to use one of our F-bombs. They have a "fuck Biden" flag out front. And these are big flags. These are not small flags. And it's not an F Biden. Fuck Biden.
Nice.
And they also have
That's hilarious.
They have a QAnon flag as well.
Okay. Well,
interesting. It's a terrible house to it's a terrifying house to even like walk by.
Right.
Because I feel like there's someone like with some like even like with some like binoculars at the window just staring at me.
Right. Or through the scope of their sniper rifle, one or the other. Yeah. Oh man.
Okay, I think I'm gonna start taking a different route from here.
Can I just right? Can I just say though, I'm sorry, but if you fly the American flag and if you fly the Confederate flag, you are a special kind of stupid.
Yeah. Well, this person has every sort of stupid flag up.
Right. I'm surprised they don't have a Nazi flag.
I mean, they might as well at this point.
That's probably in their living room, behind their couch. But yeah,
It's implied. We get it.
Right.
But I live in a pretty liberal area, so this house is surrounded by like these, love knows no hate or whatever those signs say, like Black Lives Matter signs.
I bet you he pops off like that pilot we were talking about a couple episodes back. About the guy complaining about liberals to the control center.
Yeah, look at damn Cheryl across the street driving her Prius. God damn it.
Right. I only drive something that gets 15 miles per gallon. Yeah, not rolling coal
with that damn hybrid. If I were just imagine those neighbors though, they can't sell their house. You could have the nicest house for the best price. I'm not buying that house next to if that's going to be my neighbor. There's no way I'm even considering that house.
Well, that's kind of like in the movie Step Brothers. That's like in the movie Step Brothers. Basically they threaten the kids and they're like, "Well, you guys need to move out. We're selling the house." And so then their plan is, "All right, we are going to make the house unsellable so we can stay here." So I think Will Ferrell is like dressed up in like a Nazi costume and he's like mowing the lawn and he's like, hello neighbors, but yeah. Oh man, that's so crazy. But anyways, back to this QAnon documentary. So far I'm only one episode in, but it's really fascinating that just the fact that you could post look, I don't believe everything I see and I read on the internet because that's just dangerous and stupid. Mm-hmm. However, it's really funny how much people read into these lines. Like there was one of the pictures on the documentary was a picture of Trump and all of his cronies, and they're all doing, I think, like a thumbs up. And if you connect their thumbs, it makes the shape of a Q. And I'm just like, all right, do you really think that Donnie sat down and was like, all right, we're going to do this. Make sure you get it all positioned so it makes a Q if you trade. You know what I mean?
That's like what they used to. I don't know if they still do. I mean, I'm sure people still do out there, but that's what they do with the Illuminati. You can always find a way to make a triangle out of something.
Right, exactly. But see, the thing about symbolism is if you're looking for a symbol, you can find it.
Sure.
It doesn't mean that was the intention.
That used to confuse me in literature classes. When they would tell us well, this color symbolizes this, and this animal symbolizes this, and in my head I'd be like, I mean, I understand that, but was the writer? How do we know the writer was really thinking this deeply into each color symbolizing the So you're telling me that they specifically, and maybe they did. It just seems like a bold thing to teach.
Right.
That is why that happened. I don't know.
I agree. I think there are a lot of literature teachers out there who do take a lot of liberties.
You could definitely with visual art too is obviously another big one where you'd see.
Well, I mean, you could do the same thing with music too if you really want.
That's true. That's true. People,
but you're absolutely right.
Art.
Yeah, you're absolutely right though. I remember I came across an article online from. I don't remember which author it was now, but it was from some pretty famous author, and they talked about how, yes, it's good to teach your students how to analyze literature, but at the same time, sometimes writers just do something because, as you said, they just do it because they do it, not because there's some hidden allegory or story or symbolism,
When they teach it like that, it almost feels like they turn if this makes any sense. They turn something metaphorical into something literal,
Wouldn't it be the other way around?
No, because I'm saying what should be metaphorical, the idea of white representing purity, for example. Mm-hmm. They make it this is white, so it represents purity. They're saying that's what this is representing. They're turning it into where it's now is it a metaphor? Or you're just telling me that this is what they're telling us through this metaphor. They're literally telling us this through this metaphor, essentially. Where it's okay, maybe.
Which is funny though too, because there are so many things that depending on where that writer is from, the color white could mean different things. I know in China, for example, I thought they wore white for funerals, if I remember correctly.
We've definitely talked about. I think we have a color on colors symbolizing different things in different cultures.
So guess at Chinese funeral wear. Oh no, never mind. They also wear. Oh no, white is acceptable though. I guess.
By the way, another movie I saw before we do move on to these untranslatables. Tenet. Have you heard of this damn movie?
No.
This movie it's this new movie by Christopher Nolan.
Okay.
I don't know what the hell was happening.
It's called Tenet?
Tenet, yeah. And the main character is John David Washington. Is that his name? Denzel Washington's son? Who I tend to like.
Okay.
I've seen him a lot recently because he was also in Malcolm and Marie and some
I see. Is it a thriller? What is it?
It's not scary or anything. You know what else? You know what it kind of reminds me of? It kind of gives me the vibe of like Inception. It's very time bendy. It's like it has a lot to do. It's a crime thriller, but it's not in a scary sense, but like in a suspenseful sense. But it has a lot to do with time bending. It's annoying in this. I don't.
Michael Caine's in it.
Yeah, for a short bit. He's not in it for a long time. The main characters you see are John David Washington, and then Robert Pattinson is another one, and then some other people that I don't know their names. But like it's very time bendy, and then also it's like this. I don't even fully understand the crime that they're trying to solve. They keep saying like it's nuclear. No, it's bigger than that. It's just so. And then there's always like this suspenseful music in the back. It's dumb. I don't know why people were talking this movie up when I'm pissed at myself. I rented this shit on Amazon for $6. And I'm like, the whole movie, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. So I would not recommend that, but I would recommend Two Distant Strangers.
Okay. I'll have to check it out for sure. And yeah, that QAnon documentary, for at least one episode in, it's pretty interesting.
If I could, I've heard a lot about QAnon through podcasts and social media and stuff, but, I'd happily watch this documentary if I could. I don't know, somehow stumble upon a password somewhere. I don't know. Maybe
I think we might be able to find one for you somewhere.
My house somewhere. Maybe I could find one under the couch cushions or something. I don't know.
Exactly. All right, Jared. Well, I think you know what time it is.
Yes.
It's time for some untranslatables, which are idioms, proverbs, sayings, axioms that don't always translate on a one-to-one basis into English. And I have a couple French ones for us today, but then I'm hoping as well, wow. Jared, that we can talk about some slang terms related to the police today. Because I do think those could be some good ones, especially for our listeners out there who aren't tuning in from the U.S.
Well, could we start with that? With the police-related untranslatables?
Well, I was thinking, sure. I was just thinking we could get the French ones out of the way and then go into the police ones myself.
I hear you, but when you say out of the way, it makes it seem like some sort of requirement,
Well, anyway, we are the Untranslatable podcast, so it's kind of a requirement.
I mean, yeah, sure.
All right, you want to get us started?
You can, sure. I'll give it since we are required to give at least 2 to 3 French untranslatables.
Exactly.
French today. My first one, as I said, French. Avoir le cool entre deux chaises.
Something about having two of something.
Cool? You should know that. The French form of a very
cool.
Commonly... Yeah,
is that? Mm-hmm. Oh, it's butt? Okay.
Yeah. To have one's ass between 2 chairs.
To have one's... To me, it just sounds like you're real thick. Let's see here. To have your ass between 2 chairs. Is it like to be in between a rock and a hard place?
You somehow find a way to make everything a great pickup line.
It's a gift and a curse, Jared.
In a sense, it is. By the way, in a sense, it is to be when you're in between a rock and a hard place. What are you struggling to do?
Make a decision.
There you go.
So you're being indecisive.
Yes.
Okay, I like that one. That's a good one. That's a good one. Okay. Well, I will also give you a French one. Ça n'est cassé pas trop pâté à un canard.
Canard is also a swear word, isn't it?
Duck.
Or duck. Oh, I think connard or something like that is a swear word. I did know that was duck, though, just to be clear to all my French teachers listening to this.
It doesn't break 3 legs to a duck.
Oh, it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'd give it to you. We would actually use a different untranslatable, though, Jared, that has to do with home. Any guesses? This is when people used to actually write letters.
Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Oh my gosh.
It's nothing.
It's nothing to write home about. Yes.
There you
and
go.
I use it all
Yep.
the time too, and I couldn't even think of it. Yes.
Yeah, nothing special, nothing to write home about.
Kind of like police killing black people. It's nothing to write home about. Nothing special.
Oh, let's get into it. Let's talk about these popo idioms, Jared. Well, popo, that's already one that's a slang term for the police.
Hey, well, yes, that is one. Yes, the popo. What about cops? That's the most common one. Where does that come from? Where did cops come from?
Let me find out for you. Etymology
Yes,
of
please.
cops. Because that's the funny thing, though. Cop also, like to cop something as a verb means to get something.
To cop something.
as a verb, to seize, to catch, to capture, or to arrest a prisoner from 1704 Northern British dialect.
So is it because they seize people?
Yeah.
This cop is copping
probably.
me. I'm getting copped by a cop.
Yeah, well, right here. So perhaps ultimately from French, capere, seize or to take, from Latin capere, to take. And Dutch, they have kappen, also to take. Old Frisian as well. So
That's interesting.
Yes, but then cop as a noun, Jared, policeman, cop meaning policeman, is 1859 abbreviation, said to originally be thieves slang of earlier copper, which is attested from 1846 agent noun from cop, to capture and arrest a prisoner. And then they would call a police station a cop shop. So that's kind of interesting.
All right. Okay.
Where these terms come from. So these actually both come back from England, though, which I find fascinating. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Our whole language comes from England.
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far. We got a lot of French.
Not our whole slang, but
Got a bunch of random German.
that's
Got a bunch
true.
of.
That's true.
English is such a weird hodgepodge of all sorts of shit.
But the word in French is the same though. So we could have gotten it for French or English technically because it's the same word.
Right. Exactly. So we have popo. We have cop. I think, and cop I think is one of those that, like, when I hear that term, I don't find it to be. Now I'm not a police officer, so maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't find that one to be nearly as offensive.
No, I think
as a lot
use
of the
that.
other terms.
I think I think they use that one.
Right.
Or maybe cops like the N word, only they can say it. Here's one I've always been curious about. 5-0. The 5-0.
Yeah, the 5-0. It comes from a code. It's a code. There's and that's why. I forget the code now. Let's see here. 5-0. Because I know there's Hawaii 5-0.
Yeah.
5-0. Let's see here. Let's see. Etymology of 5-0. 5-0. Okay. Etymology from the police officer.
From the TV show.
Oh, it comes from the TV show. Fascinating. Okay. Interesting. Yep. Shouted. Yeah. Typically shouted as a warning of approaching police by lookouts. So you say 5-0, 5-0.
Right, but where did that come from? Like, why did they start calling the police the 5-0?
Right, and the
Let's
TV show
go to your
that
favorite
doesn't.
Quora. Thanks for asking. Although pretty much everybody has gotten the answer correct already. I'm still gonna write out this freaking 6-paragraph monster essay about it.
Typical Quora.
Which is from the old TV series Hawaii 5-0 and Jack Lord and James. Incredibly, it's the 50th anniversary. All right, bro. So that's it. But what is? I'm trying to figure out what 5-0 meant into that show.
Right. Well, my guess would be Hawaii 5-0. I wonder, does it have to do with
they're saying it's because of the car they drove. Because they all drove Mustangs 5.0s.
Did they really drive 5.0s back then? Really?
Listen,
okay.
That was one Quora thing I saw. It said, I have another thought regarding this question. This is why I freaking hate Quora. It's just people with thoughts.
Right.
As a teenager, we were not all familiar with the Hawaii 5-0. We grew up referring to the cops as 5-0. Oh, this is why they call them cops. Simply because they drove the Mustangs with 5-liter V8s, which
I've
was
never
the GT
seen a
at the time.
cop. Now, granted, that was obviously before we were, I think, even born. But still, I've just not seen cops drive that type of vehicle.
Well, first of all, we've all seen some. Unfortunately, I hate to say it. I hate to be a car person and then also be a black person in America because some police cars I think look dope as fuck. I think
for sure.
Chargers make a cool police car.
Yep.
I remember. I think Chargers are cool looking cars in general. I would never buy one, but I think they're cool looking. And then also, I remember, I'm such a car nerd. I specifically remember I was driving to, well, I wasn't driving. I think I was too young. I was going to Cedar Point, and I saw one of those like F-body square '90s Camaro SSs that was just a normal silver like car. It looked, but
it was an
like,
undercover police car.
Yeah, and it had someone pulled over with all these hidden lights flashing, and I'm like, that's dope. So I have seen a cool police car here and there, but it's less cool when you're the black person driving down the road. But yeah, so apparently it has no real meaning.
Interesting.
Some other slang. Well, do you have any other slang?
The fuzz.
Like? The fuzz. What's that one about?
And I think that one, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I remember hearing that on like one of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Is that because
games?
they talk over the those radios and it always goes? That's gonna be my guess.
Maybe. I'm trying to find the police one. I'm just finding fuzz.
Is a slang term for police possibly deriving from the mispronunciation of the corruption of the police, the police force or the force? It may also refer to the police radio static.
Okay, yeah. So you were right about that one. Okay,
yeah. So
interesting. Okay,
but yeah, that is very skateboardy. Like it's the fuzz. We have to get out of this mall parking lot.
Yep. Can't be doing kick flips down these stairs. The fuzz are coming. Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Obviously, the big one is, and I wonder, pig. Pig is another one, and I will say that. This is not a term that I would be willing to say in front of a police officer.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, if you just see how they treat people who haven't done anything wrong, who haven't even really given them a reason to be pissed at you, let alone you call them a pig.
Hey, pig.
Which is funny though, Jared.
Me over?
Because which is funny because I looked up a bunch of slang terms for police, and I actually have this website, and we'll have to do this another episode. But and now of course I have too many tabs open, so I can't find it. But there's a website I have with like lists of slang terms, and it's A through, well, actually it's not A through Z because there's no A's, so it's actually B through W, and these are actually police terms all over the world. And so what was fascinating is as I was scrolling through this list just to find some more slang terms for cops, for the fuzz, for the 5-0, whatever you want to call it, I was amazed by how many just different countries would use different animals. So just a teaser for a future episode at some point, I believe in Hungary they actually call them the wolf, is what they call the police.
That's
in
good.
Germany they call them die Bullen, the bulls.
Okay.
So, we call them pigs. So
ours is the least flattering. At least those animals are sort of tough and aggressive.
Well, pigs are pretty tough and aggressive, but they just have this.
They do, but that's not the stereotype that most people are using.
They're fat. They're dirty. They eat everything.
Dirty, yeah, exactly. Lazy is also, which is not really true, but that is that true? Yeah, that is kind of true, aren't they? They don't really do much.
Well.
I think it depends on the kind of pig too.
Yes, and also I hate to say it, but also the kind of police officer too, probably, because there are some good ones out there. But
why do you? That's something about the perception I wanted to talk about.
Let's talk about it.
There's always that need to make it clear that there's some good ones out there. Why is that? Why do you always have to like remind people? There's some good ones out there too.
Well, Jared, it's the same. I would say the same thing if it was. I mean, if we say any blanket statement about any group or occupation or whatever, I just think it just doesn't do much when you just say, oh yeah, all cops are bad. Like, yes, the majority of them clearly have not been trained properly, clearly have a lot of issues with power imbalances.
So by good ones are ones that don't have any sort of
they're actually
record?
there to protect and serve. Exactly. Well, exactly. They treat people respectfully. They don't beat your ass for no reason. Well, frankly, I think the fact that police can even beat your ass in general is pretty messed up. You know, it already puts you at a disadvantage when you interact with police because they can use absolute brute force and all they need to say is, well, I was in danger of my life or I feared for my... Well, it's like, well, shit, what if I'm fearing for my life? I can't do anything,
I
you
would
know?
argue if you are one of these good police officers that haven't beat anyone, if that's what the judgment is of a good or bad police officer, I would say that they probably know and or work with someone that has gotten away with it.
For sure. Well, and that's the other huge issue.
They don't have a. I would imagine that. I'm not that they don't have a problem with it, but the system is set up where if you try to say anything about that person, they'll kick out the person that's complaining about that.
Exactly. That's you hit the nail on the head, Jared.
Which is also why I find it weird that you, and not just you, but a bunch of people must insist that there are good police out there. I don't understand why you always have to make that clear. I don't know, because we have never once yet said that they're all bad either, have we?
True. That's a good point. That's true.
I just find it weird though. I know people do it all the time, and I'm like, you don't. Why do you feel like you need to stick up for them? I don't get it.
That's a good point, and I don't know why. I guess I don't know. I'll have to think about it some more. I'm not sure. Not sure, but we do have. I mean the entire system we have with the and I'm not trying to get over our heads here, but just the prison system we have in the U.S., all of the different stuff we have regarding police and the justice system, the penal system, as it were. It's a crazy system.
I tried so hard not to laugh.
I figured I might be able to get you with that one, but yeah, it's just so crazy though, Jared, because you know. And I do think it's really important to recognize that depending on your race, it will really change your perceptions of police, right?
Sure.
Like me as a white guy, I've had fairly tame, interactions with the police. I'll be honest, I have never felt like my life is in serious danger. Like I never felt like, shit, this guy's going to kill me. The only scary run-in I had, and it wasn't even scary really, but I had a run-in with a police officer back when I was still in college. I went to visit our good buddy, Ian, who we met in Vienna. I went to go visit him at Northwestern. I was driving back to Michigan, and I got caught in a speed trap. I didn't see the cop because he was on a motorcycle hiding behind a highway pillar. And so then he got me for speeding, but also for failure to stop for a police officer, which raised my ticket to like $350. And for a broke ass college student, $350 is a week's work.
Chad's gonna be telling this story for the rest of his life.
Probably.
I can hear you getting angry just bringing this up.
Yeah.
And see, that's the thing about racism is you can never, people, especially I would say white people in America or just in general, always want to have these clear examples of racism. And most times I feel like people of color are more often than not walking away from just these clear situations of racism where it's like, this person called me the N-word, this person pulled me over for no reason and beat me. It's more of these like situations I feel like that people of color walk away from where it's like, did that person just do something racist to me? It was like, because you can always, like people do on social media, try to justify it away. But it's like, I feel like, I mean, now obviously there are the obvious situations too, but I feel like most racist situations are more like, I think that was racist, but I don't really know what just happened. I remember Brad and I were driving to Colorado. I think it was like right after college or something like that. And, his car was filled with a bunch of his shit because he was moving there. And I don't remember who was driving, but I think he was driving. We 100% were not speeding. He had cruise control on, going, whatever the speed limit was, and we were just chilling, And we get pulled over, and they ask us to get out of the car, and they searched the car, and they like took everything out of the car.
Oh, Jesus.
Just on the side of the road. And we weren't speeding, and we didn't get a ticket or anything. And
what was their reason to search the car?
I don't fucking know, dude. I don't know. And we didn't have anything to hide, and we didn't really know any better anyway. And in my mind, I don't know. There's no benefit to being like, you don't have any legal right to search it, because one, I'm a child, essentially, you know, I was probably like early 20s. And two, it's like, well, even if they don't, what am I going to do out here on the side of the road in freaking Nebraska or wherever? I think it was Nebraska.
Right.
And so they searched her car, took everything out, didn't find anything, and they said, all right, you know, on you go. Where it's like, I can't say that was racist or not, but it is interesting that it happened to me. That's all I'm going to say.
Right.
And so it's like, I don't know, maybe it wasn't racist, but why are you checking the car or whatever? And so, and I feel like just situations are a lot more often like that than this sort of clear, like, this is racist, this isn't racist.
Right.
Have you heard of the term Copaganda?
I haven't, but I like the term already.
Copaganda has been a super popular term in the social media spheres these days. And
so can I take a stab at what it might be? Copaganda?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm assuming, I would guess that Copaganda would be pro-police-esque propaganda.
Copaganda,
or is it the opposite?
Copaganda is no, you're right. It's a portmanteau is a word. I remember I used portmanteau in a essay one time, and I asked my mom to read the essay for me just for her feedback, and she's like, "Don't use words that you don't know the meaning of." And I was like,
"Ooh!"
I was like, "What are you talking about?" I looked it up and and she's like, and then she's like, "Well, you didn't like? Did you take this from some essay? You know, you can't just copy and paste." And I was like,
Right.
No, I just was trying to figure out what was the word for when they combined two words, and I found out it was portmanteau, so I put it in there. Yeah. Anyway, so I shouldn't say that. As I said, my mom thinks I'm a smart, genius little boy. That's essentially what Copaganda is, and it takes all different forms. You know, it takes the form of whatever is in you that forced you to have to say that all cops are good. It takes the form of, you know, when, I don't know about you, but when I was in elementary school, we took a field trip to a police station, and those sneaky bastards took all the kids' fingerprints.
Yep.
They showed you
Make it a fun little activity.
They showed you the cute little German Shepherd, which terrified me when I was a kid, by the way. And you know, they showed you the lights on the police car and all that shit. And then it also takes the form of TV shows, you know, NYPD
Hawaii
Blue,
5-0.
Hawaii 5-0.
Coming back full circle here, Jared.
Hawaii 5-0. You know, all those shows where it's like the cops saving the day, essentially. There's a whole bunch of them. You know, Brooklyn Nine-Nine got canceled because of this whole Copaganda sort of fiasco that really not fiasco, but like sort of movement that really started happening you know, around the George Floyd times, when people started to be a little bit more aware of just how intertwined, like this idea that we must respect the police and that the police are heroes. That's another big one. Police are heroes.
It's just a job.
That I feel
like
that's another one where it's almost in the same way that you had to say, like, and I'm sorry for picking on you. I don't mean to.
You can pick
in the
on
same
me.
way that
Feel free.
People say that, like, you know, there are good ones out there. I feel like there's also that knee-jerk reaction to, like, say they're heroes, and I'm not saying they're not. I don't know. I'm not saying they're like all the scum of the earth either. It's just like this idea of needing to like constantly reaffirm how important they are to society is really more of what it is.
Which is kind of funny because I feel like at the end of the day, you know, I don't want to speak for police officers because I certainly am not one, but it seems like a lot of them are looking for that ego boost. You know?
Yeah. Well, that was actually one of the. So I'm going to spoil some more. Can I spoil some more of this to strangers?
Yeah, sure.
One of the. So, you know, as I mentioned, a whole bunch of different scenarios on trying to get away from the cops. One of them was like he was trying to, like, you know, be friendly with the guy, and
that probably just backfired.
Well, he tried it a couple times.
Okay.
Sometimes it worked different ways. It's ending the same way every time. But anyway, one of the times, you know, they got to chit-chatting, and he was asking him, how did he become a police officer? And he's like, I wanted to right the wrongs that I saw in my... And he's like, and the black guy was like laughing. He's like, don't give me that, like, you know, propaganda bullshit. Why did you really want to do it? And he's like, I was sick of being bullied and people walking all over me. And it was like, so, and the black guy was like, so you know, it's funny, I remember the cop's name, but I don't remember the black guy's name. So the black guy was like, so you became the bully, and the cop said, no, I put the bullies away. And,
right, because that's totally what they do, of course.
Exactly. And it's the
Well,
sort of
Jared,
perception of how, of how people see them versus how they're seen in general.
so I don't know if you and I were having this conversation, or I might have been talking to another friend of mine. The two other friends I have other than Jared.
Yeah, I was like, who else could that have been?
Right.
You
But
mean
I
your
was-
mom?
So I was talking to one of, I think it was one of my buddies, but it could have been you as well. And we were talking about how, like, it takes a special type of person to even want to become a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have no desire to be a
Yeah.
police officer.
Yeah, no,
like,
me neither.
like I have no, who am I to tell you how to live your life or enforce the law, whatever the hell that even means,
But I did grow up, sort. I'm not going to say idolizing, but sort of
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of my, I guess, kid heroes were cops. Rush Hour, I loved the Rush Hour series.
Yeah.
Bad Boys, I love the Bad Boys series.
Mm-hmm.
So like as a Mission Impossible, he's essentially a cop. So,
Right.
I mean, he's a super cop, but he's a spy.
Right.
And so like I don't know. So it is like baked into you that also that like it's cool. It's sort of like the same thing.
Copaganda again.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a lawyer, and
Mm-hmm.
sort of I think I just like the idea of what you see in movies. These guys like
Right.
constantly on the move,
You're
getting
suave in the court.
wearing cool
Yeah.
suits, arguing with people in court, getting into sticky situations in the streets to get information.
Right.
Not just like filing reports and
Right.
sitting at your desk reading
and
briefs.
miles and miles of paperwork. Exactly.
Learning code. So like it's just like this. There's like a whole market to making cops look cool.
Right. And now I do think, once again, sorry, we're going back to the whole. I do think that some cops do get into the force for good reasons, but I do think there is probably a high percentage that are, well, I don't know if it's a high percentage, but there are certainly some police officers. I went to school with a couple state troopers. And when I found out, like I looked on Facebook and they had passed their state trooper test, I was kind of like, well, shit, I hope I don't get pulled over by you because you were an asshole in high school. Like one of these guys had serious anger problems. He beat up a kid pretty bad. And now he's a state trooper. And he's a big dude.
Yeah.
He's like 6'3", 6'4", gotta be about 220.
He loves to wear that big ass hat that state troopers love to wear. Why is it that the state troopers wear the hat? I don't know. I don't understand what that is.
It's it's probably a hierarchy thing. Just
I
like the
guess.
military.
I
Different
guess so.
stuff
Yeah,
on your
that's true. It's
uniform
like-
means a different hierarchy.
It's
Yeah.
like the Green Berets, but like the state troopers wear those big ass hats.
Right.
But to me, at the end of the day, I don't think it really matters why you got into it. I think it matters who have you become. Who are you now?
For sure. You know what also, though, Jared, is a fascinating facet of American culture and police.
Yeah.
And you won't really be able to touch too much on this since you're a fancy private school kid. But we had a deputy at our public school. And I read, once again, doing some research before today's episode, I read this really, it was cool. Actually, here, maybe I can find it real quick.
Well, while you're looking for it, I didn't have any experience with cops in school. But I'd love to talk about it because I have heard a lot about it. But I did have experience, and this is why racism is weird, and the idea of privilege is very layered, and intersectionality is weird. Because I also did grow up with a lot of privilege, and I remember one time I was driving my friend to my school was a boarding school. I didn't stay at the boarding school. I stayed at home, but one of my friends stayed at the boarding school, and I was driving him back to school at night. And in the last sort of straight road to our school, it's like 35, and I probably was going like 60. And the cop that I've seen before, he's not like a school, like he's not like a cop for our school, but he's always posted in the same spot.
Right.
And I told him, I was like, oh, we go to this school. I'm taking my friend back to the boarding school. And,
Right.
I probably made some lie like, oh, we were studying at my house and now I'm taking you back to school. And he was like, all right, go on with your day. And that was most definitely using some of my privilege of being, sort of a wealthy private school kid that goes to that rich private school right there that I go to every day.
Oh, that certainly helps. So, Jared, I couldn't find the story, but my mind is an iron trap. So let me retell this story for you.
Give it to me from your heart.
So this was a story I came across. I'm pretty sure it was on Reddit, which was basically this guy talks about how in America, in public schools, it's not uncommon to have like a deputy that's stationed at your school, right? And this was a black kid growing up in a school that was kind of mixed. You'd white kids, Latino kids, everybody. And so, but he said for some reason, probably racism, the police officer would kind of target him. And he ended up getting, he searched the kid's locker, didn't find anything. So then, for some odd reason, he still thought this poor kid was being suspicious. So he got a warrant signed by the judge, and they broke into his house, broke down the door into his house, searched his house, had him at gunpoint. His parents were out. This was like terrible timing. His parents were out of town on vacation, so his grandmother was taking care of him. So can you imagine, you're a high school student, 15, 16 years old, you're sleeping, then you and Granny get awoken to your door being busted down and then held at gunpoint by the police officers.
And the cops are essentially using school, like the school, to try and like quote unquote find criminals, what they think they're finding criminals. Like that's essentially the point of them being there. It's like, you're not here to protect us from anything. You're here to sort of, because you think you're going to collect some sort of evidence on us.
Right. And then the funny thing about that, well, not even funny, but the tragic thing about that whole story.
I don't know what you're talking
about. The whole tragedy of this entire story, though, Jared, is that this kid had to continue to go to that same school, see that same officer, and he said he had nightmares. He had all these, terrible things happen. A lot of his classmates didn't want to be friends with him anymore because they were worried if they'd associate with him that they would, and also he ended up, I guess, there was something else in the story. Basically, I think when they searched his locker and they didn't find anything, they pulled him out of school in handcuffs. So if you can only imagine how traumatizing, high school students are brutal anyways with gossip.
Yeah,
let alone
you're a criminal.
Right. And it just goes to show you exactly like you said that, in theory, the whole point of the police is to quote unquote protect and to serve.
They're there to protect the students. That's why that's why at all these black schools you put up metal detectors, and you have cops stationed all over the place. It's like, you're there to protect students, right? But no, it's like, oh no, maybe if we set up enough cops here, we can find some early criminals in the making and get us to the drug kingpins, because that's how that works.
Right.
And then, that's another sort of along the lines of that perception of the police, because then there's the conversation of, there is no lying that, or there's no exaggerating that there is a much heavier police presence in schools that are heavier populations of kids of color. Yet when we hear of all these school shootings, Chad, where do these school shootings tend to happen? In these
usually more the white schools,
wider neighborhoods, white schools, done by usually
white
people.
Kids. Yeah.
And why is it that after these instances happen, we still don't see an increase in police presence in these schools after we've seen instances of shootings happen?
That and
why, Chad?
And the shooters oftentimes are taken alive if they're white. But like there was that black guy that attacked police in D.C. the other day, or last week. And he attacked police. I don't know what his motive was, but of course they killed him, right? Whereas you have an entire mob swarming the damn Capitol of mostly white people, and you don't see I think 2 or 3 people died, and a couple of those people were police officers that died. Right?
Yeah.
From the insurrection?
Yeah,
I know that one woman got shot because she was trying to reach in the door, and they kept telling
her.
That
video? That video was.
I didn't see the video.
I
didn't see the video.
I mean, I'm not going to say. They were like, there was a barricade up, And it was like a dude in a suit. So this wasn't even
Right.
a cop. This was like some sort of secret
Service,
or
right.
something like that.
Well, and you can tell by
he
the
was
guns
literally-
they had too.
I'm not that much of an expert. I just saw he was wearing a suit, and I'm like, oh, this guy's
Right.
not your normal cop. But he was pointing the gun, and you could hear him saying, "Back up! I'm going to shoot you" multiple
Yep.
times. And then
Yep.
she continued to rip this barricade down, and it's like, I mean,
How many times do I got to tell you? Yeah.
I hate to say someone deserves that because I don't think anyone. But yeah, I mean, it's like,
Well, doesn't get more damn transparent than that, other than like literally being like, I am going to shoot you now. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, sure. But yeah,
I just find it so crazy though that we have police officers in our schools. And I think, once again, intentions and intent can be very different things, right? I think the intention of putting police officers in public schools is so, I still remember the dude's name was Deputy Mobs, and he was actually,
that's his name, Mobs.
Mobs.
That's
Yeah,
a
was his
scary
last name.
name in
Deputy
general.
Mobs. He's probably retired now, I would bet. But anyways, the whole point here is that I think the intent was, let's put some of these police officers in school so kids can interact with them, realize that they're normal people.
Copaganda.
Right. But yeah, it's just so crazy though, because yeah, I mean, they have so much power where if you're in a school, like we had drug dogs come to my high school, they would sniff the lockers, we had to like stay in all the classrooms, and it's like you're really using your tax dollars to
I imagine like the cops in your virtual background walking through as you guys are in class, like with dogs.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of
sit down
crazy.
and look forward, pretend like we give a shit about algebra.
Right.
While these cops walk
Right.
through and analyze.
All right,
everything.
a squared plus b squared equals c squared class. Yeah, like, oh man, it's and the funniest thing too about I think police and community relations and some of the problems we have with the perception is the fact that technically speaking, you're not supposed to lie to police. However, they can lie the shit out of you if they want to get something out of you, right? And I hate the fact that it is legal in our country where cops can kind of do this kind of catch-22 or kind of like gotcha moment, where they can hide behind a pillar on a fucking motorcycle so you don't even see them, and then you zoom right on by them, right? Or the fact that do other countries allow unmarked police vehicles? Because I didn't really see those in Europe, or maybe I didn't know because they were unmarked police
much
cars,
better.
Right.
I don't think so. I think that's sort of
Pretty sure that's a U.S. thing, right?
You look in a lot of European countries; those things look like highlighters. Like
Yeah.
they're orange and yellow and white.
I saw a picture online of one of the newer Tahoe models, and it was black. Looked dope as hell, but it was black. And then the sheriff embroidering or the thing on the side.
They call that ghost.
Yeah, it only lit up when lights were shined on it, which is like, it's like, okay, so if you really want...
It's like a slightly different shade of the color of the car, and it's like sort of reflective.
Exactly. And it's like, why as a country are we cool with these gotcha type of things?
Well, I've heard they do that because if you have this is just what I heard. I don't think this was Quora, but it might have been Reddit, so same thing.
Okay.
As far as the validity of these answers go.
Right.
But I heard that at least in some places they do this because if you have a fully unmarked car, you're not allowed to pursue, I believe. And I believe it's a loophole to still be able to pursue. So that's just what I heard. Once again,
loopholes upon
Twitter,
loopholes upon loopholes.
So
yeah.
who knows?
Right.
Twitter news.
It's just a shame that we've reached this point culturally as a nation where number one, the fact that I also will say the fact
but
that
I feel like it was inevitable.
Yeah.
I feel like I feel like it's a shame and a good thing because I feel like people have been living too comfortably for a long time, and I feel like there needs to be more exposure to the reality. And now that we have the all these cameras and stuff, we're getting more exposed to sort of the foolishness of this propaganda.
Right. Well, and the other big issue too with where we are culturally with the police is the fact that if there was the defund the police movement was kind of a big thing, especially 4 or 5 months ago when there were still a lot more protests and everything here in the U.S. But the funny thing is that I'm willing to bet if whoever organized that slogan, defund the police, if they could have come up with a better slogan, I have a feeling it would have gotten more traction, because if you just hear the term defund the police, which, let's be honest, your average American is probably not going to get their fat ass off the couch and Google what the hell defund the police means. They're just going to hear that and go, "Oh, these damn liberals, they just want anarchy and no police in our country." And that's not what it's about. Defund the police was about appropriating more funds for other ways to assist and help the police, such as having like social workers and people who actually know how to handle people who have mental health issues, which is a way better solution, in my opinion, than having a generally heavily armed man come up to you. Like, you've heard stories of people who have been autistic or had any other, I don't know what the right term here is, but is mental disability still okay to say? I'm not even sure.
So.
But have any other mental disabilities or any other difficulties, and then they get killed or they get put in jail or whatever. When if you just had a social worker show up to the call,
is not a police offense. Like,
right.
Guns or weapons never needed to be introduced to this situation, and a lot of times, just the presence of police is sort of already lifts the tension.
For sure.
The situation.
Well, it's really interesting,
before you move
Jared.
on, though, because I want to on the defund the police thing. I agree with you that a lot of people that are opposed to defund the police aren't going to do any research, which is why I don't think it really matters what the slogan is, because I think whatever the quote unquote libtards or liberals present as the solution to over policing, people that oppose these liberals won't want to hear it, because I feel like a large portion of the population, including a lot of liberals, I don't think that there's that big of a problem with policing, because I think it's less a political issue. I mean, it's an issue that obviously gets solved by politics, but it's more a racial issue. So I do think that there are still even a lot of liberals that don't fully understand the issue, or sort of the disdain towards police that some people have. So obviously you solve it through politics, but I don't think it's a political issue. I think it's more of a racial issue.
Okay, sure. The other big issue too with the police and this whole idea of defunding the police is I will agree. I think that police they try to wear too many hats. They try to do too much.
Yeah.
Whereas I think
for everything.
Right. Whereas I think if we did have a better system set up where, like I said, if you're having mental health issues and maybe you can get a social worker out there,
defund the police and provide the funding that you would give to the police to a social worker, so that social worker can have a car to respond to calls and stuff like that. And
the other thing too with police funding is why do police need to be armed to the teeth? Why does this need to be basically a second standing military? And that leads me to my next question, which is, if the police are armed like a military, who do you think they're actually going to be protecting and serving? Because it's probably not going to be you and I, if we're being honest.
Well, yeah. The stuff too, that's also kind of propaganda as well. I mean, we've obviously glorified weapons in general in this country.
Sure.
And we live in a culture where, for the most part, guns are cool,
Right.
And then obviously then there's money, It's why is it that we're even in a place where there's so much surplus military gear that it's like, well, we have extras, we might as well sell it to the police or give it to the police or whatever. I don't understand how that's why that is the logical system. I agree with you is essentially what I'm saying.
Right. So, Jared, I do want to mention one really interesting YouTube channel that I came across while I was also doing some of this research.
Let me guess. Is it the Ask a Black Man?
It is not, although that's a really good one. That's a really good one, and he did have police officers on that one episode, which was a really good, interesting conversation. And I will say this as well.
I got uncomfortable just watching him sitting there by himself in a room full of cops. I'm like, bro, you are.
If it makes you feel better, Jared, he has episodes after that, so he survived. He survived.
You're braver than me even to invite just this large group of cops, and you're just that one little non-cop in the middle. I was like, it's like, woo, you're probably sweating, bruh.
Right,
not me.
Right.
Couldn't be me.
Right. Well, but at the end of the day, though, Jared, what was so fascinating about that video is, the cops kind of all said the same thing. At the end of the day, we're just trying to do our job.
We're just trying to stay safe. It's very dangerous out there, and we need to get in front of the threats we're afraid for our lives, and there are a lot of threats out there. Of course, I've heard. We've all heard it before.
But
we've
anyways,
all heard the Copaganda.
The YouTube channel though that I really like, that I would say is not Copaganda, is called Audit the Audit. And so what this YouTube channel does, Jared, is basically it walks you through traffic stops with police and talks about what the police officers did wrong, and how you can basically more or less try to, quote unquote, prepare yourself. I'm doing air quotes right now for prepare, because really, if you get pulled over by a police officer, you're kind of at their whim.
Yeah.
Like, you really are.
Stop resisting. Stop resisting.
Right, and you're not even resisting. And it was funny. So there was this one video that I watched of this Hispanic guy who gets pulled over by a police officer. They were in Texas, I believe, so it's hot out, right? And he had his window cracked or window down. The officer directs him to get out of the car. As he's getting out of the car, he goes to close his window, which, I would do that if I was getting out of my car, regardless if it's just getting out or if a police officer asks me to get out the car.
Cop implies it as him trying to hide something or something.
Exactly.
Like that.
And so it ended up them having basically a 10-minute conversation, and him resulting in this guy getting his hands behind his back. Yeah. And of course, the cop searches the car, finds nothing. But what happened though, Jared, what's so crazy about the story is where this guy got pulled over by a cop was actually in his neighborhood. So his dad saw what was going on. So his dad gets in his pickup truck, drives down the street.
Into a pickup truck.
Right. His dad gets into his pickup truck, and the cop says, "Hey, you're obstructing traffic. You need to park somewhere else." The dude listens to the police officer. He doesn't argue with him. He goes and he parks his truck elsewhere. So then he walks and he's across the street. He's not next to them. He's not in the cop's face. He's not yelling. But
no interference.
He is videotaping everything, which I don't blame him. Based on what we've seen, I do not blame him.
Yeah.
Right. And so he's videotaping him, and then the cop calls for backup, and then they get
this guy across the street's being hostile.
Yep. And they get him detained and arrested as well for interfering with the arrest or whatever but see, this is the thing, is that cops can lie. They can tell you whatever they want to try to get something out of you. And so you got to be really, really careful out there. And it's a shame.
And they can always find an excuse to be detaining you. There's always some, which is why I sort of said the stop resisting, because that's sort of a classic move where it's like as soon as you say that, anything physical they do to you is a free pass, because it's like, well, the person was resisting. Why didn't they just stop resisting?
Which is so funny too, because
go ahead.
Well, the other loophole cops have is they say, well, they take nervous as suspicious. He was acting suspicious.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if I got stopped by anybody who had a gun and maybe potentially a canine that can rip my arm off,
even like undid the gun before they walk up to your door.
Yeah, or exactly, their hands on their gun,
like they're about to, like it's high noon.
Right. Yeah, I think in our country at least, we have come to the point where, we've seen it. Our police have too much power, and the fact that
we've given it to them.
Yeah,
we are in general society is okay with it.
Right. Well, unfortunately, look who a lot of the general society is. It's a lot of white people who probably never have any issues or problems with the police, so they can't really understand it,
And to them, to a lot of these white people, it is the idea of like, well, they're here to protect us. If someone were to break into my house, I would call them,
Right.
But I'm never just randomly getting pulled over for no explicable reason,
Right. Well, that's kind of
I got pulled over one time. I was speeding. I kept my hands on 10 and 2. He gave you my ticket. I said, "Thank you, sir," and we went on with our way. This cop is a good guy. He's not a bad cop.
Right.
It's like, okay.
I got two things to mention. Number one, about the calling the police to come to your house if it's robbed for white people. That reminds me of a really funny bit that Dave Chappelle did, where he was like, I'm not even going to call the police if my house gets robbed because they're going to come in here. They're going to, he hit himself on the head with his microphone and he did his white people voice, which is always so funny when Dave Chappelle does that. But he was like, yeah, we have this unarmed African American man in this very nice house, and it seems that he's posted up his pictures and all around the house. So basically he's talking about how he couldn't even call the cops as a black man because they think the house is too nice for him to live in it, right? But then it brings me up my second point I want to quickly mention. I was listening to, I think, a podcast with Bert Kreischer, if I remember correctly, and he was talking about how a lot of times for cops it's just such a power trip because I don't remember if Bert was speeding or what he did, but basically, or no, I think he parked in the wrong spot. He parked in like a handicapped spot while he was waiting for his parents or something, and the cop came up, was being a giant asshole to him, and he didn't know who Bert Kreischer was, because let's be honest, I mean, if you're
my parents have no
walking
idea who
around
Bert Kreischer
right.
is.
I mean, he just looks like a kind of a normal white dad kind of dude. He's a little bit chubby, he has a beard,
That's
probably
exactly
wearing a
what he
baseball
looks
hat.
like,
yeah. And so anyways,
Except he's probably videotaping himself at some point because that's what he always does.
But it was just so funny because the cop was like trying to do this whole power trip. He's like, well, I can write you a ticket for $700 for parking here. And because he's a rich comedian, he's just like, all right, write me the ticket. And he said by him just saying, write me the ticket, I don't care. He was like, the cop's demeanor completely changed because he didn't really have that power over him anymore. You know?
See, that's privilege right there, even to be able to say that.
Well, of course.
I would never say that.
Well, I wouldn't either because number one, I don't want a ticket. But it's just so funny, though. It just goes to show you like that I think a lot of these guys get off on them having authority and power over you.
Yeah. I mean, he probably was expecting, the police officer was probably expecting like, oh, I'm sorry, sir, I'll move right away or something like
exactly.
that. I didn't realize I couldn't park here. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Right. It was funny. I was telling my parents today. They were like, "Oh, what's your podcast about today?" And I was like, "Police perceptions." And my mom was like, "Oh, I've never had any problems with the police." I'm like, "Of course you haven't, Mom. You're a white lady who is pretty nice, and I can't see why." And she's, "Oh yeah, cops have always been really nice to me." I'm like, "Of course they have been."
I bet.
Yeah.
She's never gotten pulled over randomly in Nebraska, and they told her to get out of the car, and they just took
search
all
everything. Nope. Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
But see, that's the thing is I think there's a disconnect for a lot of people because they don't fear the police or they don't have negative, and so they think it's like that for everybody, but it's not. It really isn't.
And that's also why I say it's not really a political thing because your mom is a well-meaning liberal lady, like and
actually
so,
I wouldn't call her a liberal lady actually.
Oh really?
She's pretty conservative.
Oh really? Maybe I just assume it because of your dad.
He's definitely more liberal politically,
well,
for sure.
Dad's you're okay. Well, now
they're both well-meaning, though.
All right. Well,
we can put it that way.
Sure. Now I forgot what I was going to say because you threw me off. But
well-meaning liberal white lady.
Oh right. And that's her perception of police, and it's not really a political thing. It's more because she's a nice white lady,
Right.
And that's also goes along with that, the perceptions of the police, and because in areas like Dexter or in a lot of wider areas, it's more of a unless you're like in some sort of area where it's like a cop checks for speeders or whatever, there's not really like just a constant presence of police on every corner of the street. You're not always just seeing police just post, like there's never just a cop posted up in your neighborhood just sitting there on the side of the road for hours at a time in your neighborhood. But if you go to some of these lower income neighborhoods of color, they're like, and already the reason why there's more crime statistically is because they're just around always, because they're like, well, there's going to be crime here, so let's just sit around and watch them and wait for it, rather than the perception in other, nicer, quoter, richer neighborhoods, wider neighborhoods, whatever you want to call it, where it's like, I have a problem, I'm going to call the police and they're going to show up. Ironically, in those neighborhoods, those lower income neighborhoods of color where there are cops posted up all the time, there's also the stereotype that if you were to call the cops, they're not going to show up at any timely fashion.
Yep. Well, there's a lyric in is it No Role Models by J. Cole where he says I gotta find it now because he says something along the lines of like, "I show up as quick as a police officer in a white neighborhood."
Oh, yes.
I'm pretty sure that's in
that is
No
a
Role
line.
Models, right?
Probably. I do remember
I'm gonna have
that
to
line
find it.
'cause I
That's
have
gonna drive me
listened to that
crazy.
album.
It's a great song. But yeah, it's true though. I mean, well, I remember. I'll never forget. I stayed in an Airbnb in Chicago a couple of years back near Mexican Town. And the dude that we were staying with, it was his apartment. He told us, he said, you don't want to go to this part of the area. I forget where it was now. And he said, if you go there and you have problems, even the cops won't show up. And I was just like, damn.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let me
There's
see.
another line by Bobby Fino, another rapper. He says, "Bank looks good, home looks nice, bank look good, cop roll by and he don't look twice. Haha, just playing. Gotta duck that still." And he says more of that, but he's essentially saying that, like, you know, I got a nice house, I'm living well now, and he's like, cops don't even look at me anymore. He's like, just kidding, they still do.
Right. So here's the J. Cole line. Here, I found it. I came fast like 911 in white neighborhoods. Yeah. Which is just so funny. But yeah, it's, oh man. Our country, though, Jared, we have a lot of work to do when it comes to the police, the entire system. Oh, I don't even know where we begin, man. I don't even.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's tough.
I can't watch Rush Hour 6 when it comes out or whatever number they're on because I'm just contributing to the problem.
Right. And it is so crazy though, just to go back to this idea of, oh well, if you just do what they tell you, you know, or if you just comply, it's like no, you can comply, and if they're having a shit day, it doesn't matter. And the scariest thing,
why the cops say it, so they have the out of saying they weren't complying.
Right.
Obviously, maybe sometimes they actually mean it, but like a lot of times when you see that, it's like this person doesn't even. You have like 4 or 5 cops on top of one person. I don't even understand how this person could resist.
Right.
And so it's just an out to then physically do whatever you want to them.
Exactly. And there's so many loopholes. And the biggest question is, who's going to police the police?
Yes.
You know, or like this YouTube channel, who's going to audit the audit? You know, who's going to police the police? I will say this though, after watching, I kid you not, Jared, after watching this YouTube channel, I've been very tempted to get a dash cam because the majority of these cases have been thrown out because of the dash cam footage that the driver had. Because the cop will say, oh, well, they were acting really nervous and suspicious. And like one video I was watching, the guy, it was literally a 10-minute discussion. The guy rolled his window down like a quarter of the way down, and the cop was like, sir, can you roll your window all the way down? And he's like, well, officer, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And once again, the officer kept asking him, why once again, the same old, do you have anything to hide? All this stuff.
But we can clearly communicate with each other.
Yep.
I don't
and
understand
that's what the guy
problem.
said. Exactly.
Like, you can even slide the ticket through. I can slide my license through.
Exactly. The problem is that you're not blindly listening and following their authority.
Not the way he wants it.
Right.
I will say, I mean, I guess I understand. I mean, I could hear them say the safety line, but it's like, I don't know what they're going to shoot through their own window at you. What do you think's going to happen?
Well, and it's not like this guy's windows were tinted. You could see clearly through.
That's true.
You know, it wasn't a sight impairment or anything else. And the other funny thing is too is when I was watching a few of these videos on this YouTube channel, so shout out to Audit the Audit, because I've learned a lot from this YouTube channel. The interesting thing though is that a lot of these people, they're not being disrespectful to police, but at the same time they'll ask them questions. The police will ask these passengers or drivers questions, and they don't always answer them. But the thing is you don't have to actually legally answer everything they say.
That's also another aspect of Copaganda, this idea of needing to give them the utmost respect, the yes, sir, and no, sir, and whatever. I mean, and honestly, this is something I do because I'm trying to avoid conflict.
Well, shit, George Floyd called the police officer sir, if you watch the video, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also Philando Castile, who was shot in his car with his family in his car, he had a legally registered gun on him, and he did what he was legally supposed to do and told the cop, just so you know, I have a legally registered gun on me, which is what I'm supposed to do as soon as I get pulled over, is state that.
Right.
And then, that was a threat enough. But, so yeah, we could talk about these all day. We don't have to go through. And it's
Right.
just to get sad if we go through every time
That's true.
a black person's gotten shot, because it's happening right now as we speak too. Let's be honest. So we could go on forever.
Yeah, well, I hope there will be some changes one
Are you
way or
gonna stop
another.
watching cop shows? What are some cop shows you
Well,
like
I don't
to
watch cop shows at all, anyways.
You never
I need
liked
to.
like fighty cop shows when you were a kid?
Nope.
I
The only
did.
cop show I watched actually and that I liked was Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but that was more for the
Okay.
comedy,
Well,
not for the cop
that got
stuff.
canceled because
Right.
it is sort of a liberal like casted show.
Right.
And it is part of
I'm
that
a big fan of
Copaganda.
Terry Crews.
Oh, he's another one that's you've heard, people have been talking about him on social media. Not as much recently. It's been quiet recently, but a year or two ago, when there was all the talk about white supremacy and cops, he's like, well, white supremacy is a problem, but we need to be careful with all this Black Lives Matter and stuff going on about black supremacy taking over as well. We don't want to do the exact same thing that these white people are doing to us. He was saying stuff like that. And he's like, and so it was like, why are you saying these things, Terry Crews? You could just also, you're scared. Are you afraid of black supremacy, Chad?
I'm not, but that's a good point.
You should be.
Oh fuck, who was it? There was I forget the YouTuber now, but there was a YouTuber that essentially said the same thing. Like, so what? Are we just going to treat white people the way that white people treated
Who's
us?
saying that though? I don't understand.
I don't know either.
That's a. I mean, I can't speak for Terry Crews, but I can't speak for white people either. But I think that's just a fear that white people will be treated by black people the way white people. Wait. White people will be treated by black people the way white people have historically treated black people. I think white people struggle to understand the concept of equality because they imagine that black or people of color in general getting more power and access will then turn into the same thing happening to them what happened to people of color over historically. That's my hypothesis.
Right. Yeah, I'd agree with that. But yeah. I mean, it's a tricky and sticky situation.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely say though, I mean, just try to be smart and be safe out there. That's the only advice I'm going to give today.
This was heavy. I understand.
It was.
It's also it's a struggle. It's a struggle to transition from this to sort of the lead out. Just remember, listen, it's not all bad. White boy summer's coming up, so
or hot vax summer.
Hot vax summer. Chad
That's
got
the
his
summer
first
I'm going
shot
for.
Today. How was it, by the way? Because you seemed pretty nervous.
I was a little scared, a little nervous. I was. I'm not going to lie.
Can we talk about the fact that your parents took you? I'm still not over that.
What? Why does they offered and I said yes? I don't see what
Okay,
is so.
I don't know. I thought maybe it was part of the fear. Like you thought maybe you'd pass out, and you're like, well, I want me to drive home an hour lightheaded. But
No,
the process was super easy. Were there any lines or anything?
There was a bit of a line.
I figured there'd probably be more people for you on a Sunday than me on a Thursday or whatever.
Right. There was a bit of a line, but overall the process was good. It was funny. I texted my sister. I was like, not that I really want to go see a Lions football game, but it is a little sad that the first time I ever went to Ford Field, which is the Lions Stadium, was for a COVID vaccine and not for a football game.
By the way, did you see what I meant by the quickness of the shot? I couldn't understand.
It was literally like
explain it.
It was
but
done.
It's like a it's not like a stick put in. But
Right.
it's sort of like a one motion sort of.
Right. Well, that's how they get the 5G microchip chipped into you,
You
Jared,
can't put it in slowly because then they'll
Right.
feel the chip go in. You just got to sort of shoot it in fast. It's like jumping into a cold pool. You just got to do it all at once.
Exactly. It's like that one lake we had to jump into in Austria in the mountains. Remember that? That was gorgeous.
I
but
do
same
remember
thing.
that. That was
you had to just jump in.
freezing.
Yeah, for sure.
It was
But
gorgeous
yeah.
too. It was so aggravating.
It was.
how freezing it was.
Right? No kidding. But yeah, well, let us know what your thoughts are on and your perceptions of the popo, the fuzz, cops at untranslatablepodcast@gmail.com. You can check us out on Instagram and YouTube, Untranslatable Podcast. And also, please, 5-star reviews on iTunes and Stitcher. Let us know how we can make this podcast better for you. So, as we say here at the Untranslatable Podcast, dziękujemy, muchas gracias, shisha, and do svidania. Not gonna lie though, dude. I definitely, whenever I'm driving and I see a police officer, it's always like hit the brakes real quick, make sure I'm not speeding.
That's a classic. I would never. I don't do that. So first of all, I think that's a classic mistake. That's actually one of my bigger street pet peeves. I saw it all the time on my drive to Louisiana. Is you see the cop and you hit the brakes. First of all, if you've seen the cop, it's probably too late if they're actually checking for your speed. And I've been in so many situations with people where it's like where they hit the brakes and it's like you weren't even speeding. Like you went from going 72 to going 64, where it's like that to me is more shady than just continuing along at 72.
Right.
And so I am fully again, obviously if I see a cop and I'm going 90, I'm going to slow down.
Right. I would hope so.
But I see so many people that aren't speeding hit the brakes, where it's like that's a weird reflex that you have, because to me that's way more shady than just continuing along at your currently legal pace.
Right. I forgot to ask you this during the pod.
You're still recording, right?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Do you think? I should have asked you this during the pod, but do you think if we did have more people of color in the police force, do you think that would change perceptions or not really?
I don't think so. I mean, there are plenty of people of color in the police force. I don't know what the numbers are, but but the thing is, to be able to, it seems like to me, to be able to survive in the police force, you have to conform.
Be quiet.
Exactly. You have to conform to. You're now on the team police. So there is this thing where it's like you can never be in a situation where you're saying the police officer did something wrong. Like that breaks their code to say, like, to be on the side of people saying the police officer did something wrong. So once you're a police officer, I don't think the race really matters as much, because I think to even be able to survive in that, you have to sort of conform to the culture of the police.
Right. Well, the other weird thing too is that if you do try to do the right thing, like you mentioned at the beginning of the pod, by you trying to do the right thing, you rat out your coworkers, and then you get either blacklisted or demoted, or right.
No one wants to be your partner.
Right.
It's like, I can't do some illegal shit around Johnson. Forget it.
Right. Right. Exactly.